Well, I'm sure you've all seen this Gary Tosspot, whose name I couldn't give a monkey's fuck for, but is currently being touted around by a bunch of champagne socialists and middle-class commie cretins as a great voice of the working class. This despite him being a multi-millionaire and sounding about as sincere as Starmer does.
Far right.
In fact, when I first see him, I thought it was a Panland version of Slim Shady ready to shit out some piss-poor freestyle against Donald Trump, but apparently he ain't. He just spouts crap instead. Now, to some of the brain-dead tosspots out there, his trope is actually working, but to me, all I see is the same old bollocks that screams tax the rich, blah blah blah. And naturally, the freeloading ponces that normally vote Labour or Lib Dems are lapping it up, because they got zero brain cells and think taxing the rich will be like the communist revolution, some TikTok video sugar-coated as a great thing. This despite the fact he himself admits his own crap won't work while claiming that's why he's doing it, because it's hard. But shit, you know it's pushing an agenda when someone like this just appears out of thin air to all of a sudden arrive on everyone's social media feed spouting what many would call commie crap, to the point he even appeared on Question Time recently that we're gonna go through here. Because my god, if this is the saviour of the working class, I must be the fucking messiah. First though, let's start with him introducing himself so we all know who he is.
For people who don't know who I am, I was Citibank's #1 trader in the world in 2011. I got paid millions of pounds because I bet that our economy would collapse because you wouldn't deal with growing inequality. I quit that job in 2014 to try and stop that inequality from growing. I was doing that in private until the beginning of COVID, when it became clear that inequality would increase enormously.
Hold on, does that even make sense? He said he was a City trader that got paid millions in 2011 betting on the UK economy collapsing due to wealth inequality. Now, could someone please explain to me how the fuck he managed to be the top trader betting on something that didn't actually happen? Because I don't know about you, but I don't remember the economy collapsing due to wealth inequality around 2011, or ever for that matter. Yes, we had the 2008 crash 3 years before then, but that was city wankers like him making stupid trades that caused that, not wealth inequality, was it? And shit, we didn't even have a recession in 2011, just 1 quarter without growth, so I'm baffled by that statement.
Does anyone know what the total government deficit is since the beginning of COVID? It's £1 trillion now, which is £20,000 for every single adult in the country. So if every single one of you is not £20,000 cash richer, someone else has your money.
Is that the debt or the deficit?
It's the increase in the debt, which is the deficit.
Debt, right, yeah.
Does anyone know who has that £1 trillion?
I think you might be about to tell us.
It is the richest people in the country. It is the richest people in the country. Now, I'm going to ask you a question. If we pause the economy and give £1 trillion, £20,000 for every adult in this room and the rest of the country to the richest people in the country, and then unpause the economy, what do you think will happen to living standards for ordinary people? They will collapse. This is a problem of growing wealth inequality. The extremely rapid growth of wealth of the richest people in the country. The average billionaire increased their wealth by £630 million in the first year alone of COVID.
When you say it's not the wealthy people, is it things like the Canadian pension funds and all that sort of thing?
It's the wealthiest individuals in the country. It's multimillionaires and billionaires. These are the guys.
But also massive pension funds from abroad.
And here.
And who are the overwhelming owners of those pension funds? The richest people in the country. Listen, these men and women are not £20,000 richer.
I don't know if they're the richest people in the country, but OK.
Who here's £20,000 cash rich than before COVID? I'll tell you who probably is. Every single person on this panel, OK? Nope. The richest people in the country are getting richer.
Hang on, don't include us in all this. I don't know if you've seen the way the BBC works, but they're not exactly raising salaries by that much.
All I'm going to say is, this growth in wealth inequality, it is going to keep the middle class and the working class poor. It is going to gut government services, and that is the people in this room. Their kids, their grandkids will be poor.
Gary, you've obviously...
because we are not dealing with wealth inequality.
Now, to his credit, he is right about the current UK deficit sitting at £1 trillion and how the great pandemic con job helped it get there. But unfortunately, afterwards, his agenda takes over because these talking points should be used to push for COVID fraud investigations, not taxing the wealth of people. I mean, he's claiming that the rich got richer because of the old pandemic, and now them being richer is hurting normal people, when in reality, what really hurt normal people was the government shutting the country for almost 2 years and printing money to pay people to sit at home, which every tosspot supporting this guy loved as one of those pan-clapping demented seals on a Thursday night. That is what crashed the economy and living standards from 2020 onwards, as you all know. So for me, this just sounds like he's using that bollocks to push commie wealth redistribution bollocks on total brainless. Shit, he even claims the panel are part of the super rich taking this money from the poor, despite him likely being richer than any of them, being a former top paid banker by his own admission. Which makes me question how the so-called left think he's so great. Oh yeah, that's right, they're all dumb as a fucking brick, ain't they? Anyway, let's move on, because next up he'll give us a solution to the problem.
As you rightly say, you spent a lot of time thinking about this. What do you think the solution or solutions might be?
We have to shift the tax system. We have a tax system which taxes ordinary working people 30, 40, 50, 60%, while people like the Duke of Westminster can inherit £10 billion and pay nothing. If you do that, wealth will be sucked out of the middle class. It's already been completely bankrupted the working class. It will bankrupt the government, which is what we are seeing. And there'll be poverty. There'll be broad poverty. There'll be no middle class left. Why are we taxing working people more than billionaires? Tax wealth, not work. Give these people a break. Give their kids a chance. Tax the billionaires. Of course you should.
OK.
Now, here he once again is right that people are paying too much tax, but instead of pushing for better government spending, which is what's really needed, he just wants more billionaires to be taxed even more. I assume because he thinks this means more money will be spent on public services or tax breaks for the working class, maybe.
They're living in a dream world.
Which obviously is living in a pure fantasy land, because without a change in government spending policy and, well, literally everything, it'll just be spunked on foreign wars and vanity projects, or used as an excuse to borrow more money to funnel into the net zero con job. Shit, Ed Miliband will be on that idea like a fly around shit, you can be sure. Obviously, the deficit or debt is not created by billionaires making money and not paying a wealth tax. It's created by corrupt politicians wasting our money on crap while they borrow countless billions that our children's grandchildren will be paying back long after we're all dead. Which is something I doubt you'll ever hear Gary the Saviour of Public Money mention even once. But now let's move on, because next we hear some utter bullshit that the piss-poor BBC prat fails to call out.
You will know as well as I do that wealth taxes have been tried in a number of countries. Only Switzerland has stuck with it. I mean, they've got no capital gains tax, they've got no inheritance tax, they've got a slightly different situation.
Yep.
But most countries have abandoned them because they don't bring in that much revenue. What makes you think it would be different here?
Fiona, we did it here. We did it here. We did it here in the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, and people like my dad, people like my granddad, who was a bus conductor, were able to buy houses, have financial security, have pensions, have retirements, go on holidays. We did it here. We did it here, and we're losing that now because we're not taxing the rich. The rich are getting richer, and ordinary families are losing the ability to buy houses, have kids. We can do it. We've done it before.
OK.
Now, Fiona Bruce rightly points out that wealth taxes don't work because they don't. But hold on a minute there. The UK didn't have a wealth tax in the 1950s at all. It had a disgustingly high income rate tax and a death tax that most people who fell under it left the country before it came in. But that's not a yearly wealth tax that he's trying to push for, is it? Shit, this even Andrew Neil pointed out on Twitter was bollocks, so it does make me wonder why Fiona Bruce didn't call out this misinformation on national TV. But probably the greatest bit of bullshit in that clip there is his claim that because of the wealth inequality, normal people can't buy houses and all that. This is of course nonsense, because the real reason people can't buy houses these days is due to mass immigration outstripping the housing supply. The same is true for public services and, well, pretty much everything else. But of course he can't say that, because every left-wing fuckpig currently sucking his ballsack on this wealth tax will shit the bed and call him a Nazi.
Far right.
If you import hundreds of thousands of people to over 1 million of people per year for decades on end, prices will go up because demand outstrips supply and building houses takes time. That's why I laugh when politicians claim they will build 1.5 million houses in 5 years like Labour recently did. This despite that meaning they would need to build almost 822 houses every single day, 7 days a week for 5 years straight. And that still wouldn't keep up with net migration into the country in that 5 years. Anyway, let's move on, because up next was media trout Camilla Tominey, I think it is, who, it's gotta be said, shits on these arguments each time. But before all that, she actually points out a real problem, which is ever-increasing government spending, despite public services going down the pan like a runny turd, as we all know. Naturally, though, she stops short of saying we need to rein in state spending, so let's move on to her destroying the wealth tax comic crap he's here to spew.
If the tax take gets too high, then unfortunately contributions go down because the rich can afford to move elsewhere and avoid it. And that's not progress.
Can I ask you a quick question on that? Do you think that China would allow somebody to own billions and billions and billions of pounds of Chinese assets and then move to Monaco and not pay tax on those assets?
I have no idea what the policy would be in China, but then lots of billionaires in China are reliant on slave labour, so it's probably not the best example.
Listen, we have given the literal assets of this country to very, very, very wealthy people. and we have created a tax system that makes it voluntary for them to pay tax. If you do that, ordinary people will get poorer and poorer and poorer every year, and millionaires and billionaires will get richer and richer every year, and ordinary people will not be able to buy homes and have families.
But Gary,
and I'm
you're
not just saying that, I
suggesting
bet
the
on
rich
that.
don't pay tax in the UK, are you?
The tax burden is falling on working people. Working people pay rates at much higher levels.
But you also agree, I appreciate that working people are paying tax. Everyone's paying tax. Is anyone who's working not paying tax? The rich do pay their taxes. You're saying that you think they should pay more tax on their wealth? And are you differentiating between wealth or inheritance?
Wealth. They should pay tax on their wealth. If you don't tax these people on their wealth, they will squeeze everybody out.
And the European examples where that's been tried, France, Norway, etc., where they've had to scrap those schemes because A, they're too much to administrate, and B, they don't get enough revenue in. What's your response to that? Because it's not as if European nations haven't tried this. They've tried it, and unfortunately, it's failed.
Well, just wow. Imagine using China as your example of not letting people take wealth out of the country. You know, the communist-run dictatorship. Probably not the smartest one, as she pointed out, but the fact he went straight there tells me his style of political ideology, and it's very red. Of course, it's such a stupid response that I don't really need to shit on it anymore because the mainstream media prat did it perfectly by pointing out many Chinese billionaires got their use in slave labour under CCP straight control. I guess the progressive left only care about slave labour when the evil white man's doing it, hey? Which is maybe why he doesn't bother arguing against what she said there and moves on to more buzzword bullshit, including the claim that rich people can voluntarily decide to pay tax or not. Which of course is bollocks because at best they can use loopholes to pay less tax, but in one way or another they'll have to pay some tax if they actually live here. This she points out while mockingly telling him this crap don't work as history has shown him. In fact, it was like a parent correcting their child for getting something so wrong it needs correcting before they believe it to be the truth. I don't think he noticed her mocking her, or if he did, he took it bloody well. Now though, let's hear his responses to what she said there.
Yeah, whenever people suggest this to me, I always think of the Conservative second home stamp duty tax. Do you remember that?
Yeah, but do you want to answer that question?
Yeah, I'm answering it now.
OK.
Yeah, I'm answering it now.
What do you think we would do differently that the European countries have not done?
When the second home stamp duty tax was brought in, I was very surprised because I didn't think the Conservatives would tax rich people. I looked into it. There was an exemption for people who bought 7 or more homes at once. And then Jeremy Hunt went and bought 7 homes. Listen, I understand it is difficult to tax rich people because politicians are rich people and they're funded by rich people and they put loopholes in the system that mean rich people don't pay them and it ends up being paid by working people. That doesn't mean we don't do it.
OK, I'm not sure that's answered the question. And I've no idea if Jeremy Hunt did buy 7 homes insteadly, but, you know, I appreciate that's what he's saying.
Is there a guarantee that the wealth tax receipts go to the poor? This is the other problem.
Let me bring Daisy.
Public sector pay rises for train drivers that are already on good wages.
Let's let Daisy.
Well, the mental gymnastics in that is fucking incredible when you consider he didn't even answer the fucking question. Well, apart from saying he knows it will be hard and that working people will end up footing the bill, but we should just do it anyway.
Because politicians are rich people and they're funded by rich people and they put loopholes in the system that mean rich people don't pay them and it ends up being paid by working people. That doesn't mean we don't do it.
And it ends up being paid by working people. That doesn't mean we don't do it.
So he's essentially calling for a wealth tax to be brought in that will harm the working class and make less money for the country just because he thinks we should. And the so-called champions of the working class are calling him a great saviour of the working class. Are they having a bloody laugh?
You fucking demented.
It seems like we've entered some alternate reality where up is down and down is up, because I'm fucking baffled by that one. Shit, even Fiona Bruce points out he didn't answer the bloody question before the media trout points out the working class won't see a fucking penny of it, which is bloody right. But the fact people actually think this guy is some great champion of anything is truly disturbing, because not only is what he say bollocks, it also don't make sense half the time. Shit, he was even mocked by a media trout for fuck's sake.
Fucking embarrassing.
But you know what, enough of me talking. Let me know what yous lot all thought down below and I'll see you in the next one.
Pandemic